I want to make a bet with you, dear viewer. I'm about to relate an anecdote, and I bet you've not only heard this, but you've believed it as well. Maybe you've even repeated it. If I win, you have to stay through the end of this video and give it a like too. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, etc. The story goes that the first time people saw a film of a train barreling down at the camera, they all believed that the train was real and coming for them, and they screamed and scattered and panicked. Those fools! Sound familiar? The movie in question is called L'arrivée d'un train en gare de la Ciotat. It was released in 1895 and clocks in at a whopping 50 seconds. Movies these days are too long. Media scholar Martin Leuperdinger investigated this commonly retold myth in a paper called Lumiere's Arrival of the Train. He found no actual historical evidence to support this story, this idea that people panicked when they saw the train coming. It's highly unlikely that any such event ever took place, although Leuperdinger does have some theories about how this myth developed. Like a lot of our ideas about the past, it's a mixture of truth and fiction, information taken out of context and warped. And hey, double or nothing on that bet, but Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast, the one that everyone thought was a news report and caused mass panic? Well, yeah, there's evidence that some people were convinced, but a lot more people were just confused, and even more totally understood the circumstances of that broadcast and were just enjoying the ride. The fact that anybody was even a little confused about the War of the Worlds broadcasts is due to the way that people listened to radio in that time period. The show opens with the standard
Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells,
clearly marking it out as a fictional drama. But if you were channel surfing, that's for a TV remote. But if you were channel surfing and you tuned in halfway through the show, you might think you were listening to a news report.
Mr. Wilmot, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard?
Those listeners were receiving this information devoid of context, and they reacted accordingly. Whether a listener responded with, "Oh no, aliens are for sure attacking," or, sorry, what's happening?" Or, "Oh, this must be a fictional radio show, like it's very popular out in the ether," depends mostly on the kind of individual person they were. And you still see all of those reactions with modern media. Ghostwatch, The Blair Witch Project, people react in a variety of ways. But people who have measured, reasonable responses to things are rarely the ones that we highlight. And a big part of why this made headlines was newspapers blowing it out of proportion. It's almost as though the social media phenomenon of amplifying the most outlier opinions is not something that's new, but actually a core feature of humanity. The first time I heard these myths, I also took them for granted. And yes, I will be liking this video at the end as per the terms of the bet. People are weird, panicky creatures, and it seems entirely possible that when confronted with the life-size image of a train on a screen or the idea of an alien invasion, that they would believe it and panic. I myself am one of the people who uncritically believes the things that I hear. The person who tunes in halfway through a sci-fi show and thinks, maybe this is real. In his paper, Leuperdinger tracks the evolution of this ran from the train movie myth. Early versions poked fun at country folk. The idea was that those unsophisticated rubes were dumb enough to believe the movie was real. This was to contrast with the smart, metropolitan moviegoers that the myth was meant to flatter. The idea remained the same, but the rhetorical purpose behind it, aka the thing that it's trying to convince us of, changed. The myth arrived in academic texts where it was not meant to be taken literally. Instead, it was a metaphor about the awesome power of cinema.
Somehow, heartbreak feels good in a place like this.
Then, as academic ideas often do, it trickled into the public consciousness, but in this disconnected, misshapen sort of way. The idea of people running from a train movie stopped being a piece of information in context with other information. It became a story that we repeat to reassure ourselves that people in the past were stupid instead of country rubes. It became trivia. People in the past are the perfect object of derision, the perfect other. They no longer exist, so they can't push back against any characterization we want to make about them. Suggesting that folks used to be stupid isn't so different from the nostalgic impulse, which revises the past to be more wholesome. The implication in both cases is that whatever people in the past were, we're not like that. People these days are smart and/or morally bankrupt. Basically, whatever virtue or sin you want to apply to people in the past, you can. To quote L.P. Hartley, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. And when information comes from faraway places or long ago times, it's very easy to strip it of really important, clarifying context. Or even from near places and near times. Like if there was some sort of button you could press that forcefully removed information from one context and into another, that would be a nightmare. By the time you learn a piece of trivia, at worst, it's just an outright lie, because people do just outright lie. But at best, it's information that has been stripped of context. And when information is removed from context, it is easily warped to fit the belief or intentions of the person repeating it. Do you remember that photo? It went viral probably like a decade ago, but it was a bunch of students who were looking at their phones sitting right next to the Night Watch, a very famous painting. And the context that people forcefully put this image in was, look at kids these days on their smartphone. But that's a very unfair reading of that image. Other people said that those students were actively looking at an app that the museum provided to give more information about the Night Watch. Which is true. Who knows? But a photo itself is just an image locked in time and then removed from the context of what happened immediately before and immediately after it. This is a cyclical behavior. We believe people in the past were stupid because of the stories we tell about them, but we tell those stories because they reaffirm our idea about people in the past, i.e. that they were stupid. Maybe this is more of a downward spiral, where the trivia gets repeated and repeated like a game of telephone until only the most basic aspects, the worst outliers, the dumbest, cruelest, most foolish lowlights remain. So we think people in the past were stupid because it serves the rhetorical purpose of making us think that we're smarter just by virtue of being born in the modern era. Easy! So simple! No, it's much more complicated than that. This is less true now than it was, say, a decade ago. But there used to be a prevailing thought in central and leftish politics that the future will inevitably be better, that people are naturally becoming more enlightened, and that civil rights movements will continue to make gains, and that nobody has to try too hard or give anything up to get a better future. That way of thinking creates three eras of progress. The past, which was always worst, the present, which isn't perfect, but which is certainly better than it used to be, and the future, which will inevitably be better. God forbid I reference 1984. But in 1984, Winston's job is to rewrite books and newspapers to conform to the most modern version of history, erase unpersons, correct statistics, so forth and so on. He's part of the propaganda machine meant to control the information people receive. And Orwell even specifically says they're told that they're more intelligent and better educated than people of 50 years ago. But it's actually Winston's friend Sim that reveals the purpose of this behavior. Sim is working on slimming down newspeak, the language used by the party. He says, "Don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible, because there will be no words in which to express it. Every year, fewer and fewer words, and the range of consciousness always a little smaller. If you believe in language and art and humanity, this idea is truly chilling." For the purpose of controlling people, having a history that's consistent with your rhetoric is more important than it being accurate or even favorable. History isn't written by the victors. It's not even written by purposeful, albeit unwilling propagandists like Winston. It's written and rewritten by us, people who are so certain we know the truth that we uncritically repeat inaccuracies. Consider the Stonewall movie that came out a few years back. You might remember that people lambasted openly gay director Roland Emmerich because he centered the story on a white corn-fed lad, and then later claimed incorrectly that, quote, Stonewall was a white event. The movie suggests that this person was the first person to throw a brick at Stonewall. But hey, let me make another bet with you. I bet you think Marsha P. Johnson threw the first brick at Stonewall. But Johnson, by her own account, arrived after the events of Stonewall had begun.
I was uptown. I didn't get downtown till about 2 o'clock, because when I got downtown, the place was already on fire and it was a raid already. The riots had already started, and they said the police went in there and set the place on fire.
The instigating moment was likely the arrest of biracial drag king Stormy DeLavery, though even that's uncertain. If you want to learn more about commonly repeated myths about Stonewall, I'm going to drop a link to a really good video down in the description. But more than those details, the idea that Stonewall was the beginning of gay liberation in America is inaccurate. That was an important moment, but it wasn't the beginning of the movement. A lot of work happened before and after, but that's not the labor we lionize. Overwriting history convinces us that we don't have anything to learn from people in the past. It erases the actual, complicated, dedicated work that people did to ensure that we get to live better lives. And when that happens, it becomes much harder to conceive of how to continue doing that work so that things really do get better. Our range of consciousness gets smaller. We become less likely to even conceive of some kind of brand new world. It makes modern people dumber by convincing us we're smarter. Ignorance is strength. I'm an analyst of media and culture. I don't consider myself a historian per se. And the point of this video is not to correct your specific understanding of specific moments in history like Stonewall. It's about convincing you that pop culture osmosis is not enough to give you a real understanding of history, and that the work of historians has greater value than we necessarily perceive it as having at this moment. Just like somebody turning on War of the Worlds halfway through the show, modern people often lack that context that makes the behavior of people of the past make total sense. If you only ever learned the results of history and never all of the events that lead up to those results, then you're doomed to repeat it. God, if only there were a pithier way of saying that. Hey! If you're still watching, I hope that means I won that bet at the beginning of the video and you're dutifully staying towards the end. I'll make another bet with you. I bet in 100 years, people think that line in that Nicole Kidman movie ad where she's like, "People are reborn here," is literal. I think people will think there were literal theatrical baptisms. Put this video in a time capsule. I'll meet you here at this URL in a century. Anyway, thank you for watching this video, and a special thank you to Court and Danielle Welch, Alice, and Common Opponent, who I heard on good authority all super believed the Blair Witch Project was real. If you feel like you learned something from this video and would like to learn more things from more videos, consider supporting my Patreon at patreon.com/thejenna so that I can continue making videos and also pay for health insurance. Oh, my phone's ringing. How unprofessional. All of the tiers get access to my Discord and to all of the bonus videos that are on the Patreon, and certain tiers get the ability to vote on topics for videos that I'm going to make. That's what this video was. They voted on this topic, and so I made the video on it. And this is it. You're watching it. Anyway, patreon.com/thejenna. Oh, I don't have 1984. I don't have my book with me. Oh. I like having book props.